What's good, you guys? Cass back with another video. It's with heavy heart I have to say I have to make this video, but I should have expected it, although it doesn't make me any less disappointed. The 50 series launched, at least the 5080 and the 5090, and even though when you expect certain bad things to happen, when they still happen, it doesn't make you any less disappointed and like, wow, I knew it was bad, but dang, like I was, part of me was hoping it would be different, but I guess in reality, it's always the same. Gamers have lost the plot at this point. That's pretty much all I can say. It's hilarious every single time. You go on to forums looking for like best price to performance, not focusing on the high end, buying, like, people will say buy what you need, looking to get that extra value. But as soon as Jensen gets on stage with his leather jacket and shows the latest flagship graphics card, in this case 5090, everyone seems to lose common sense for like the next, I don't know, 2 months at least, until things kind of like settle back to normal. And we're right in the heat of exactly that stupidity. With the launch of the 58 and 5090, I mean, I made my video and I told everyone in that video that, they're good graphics cards, they have good performance. The technology is very inspiring. It's intriguing to get into. They're the pioneers for the future of gaming, as far as like the graphics and how things are rendered and how we play video games. Whether you like it or not, that's the way that they're going to do it. And in all honesty, I'm confident that they'll be able to give us a decent product, as they've shown in the past. And AMD, they could choose to do their own thing, but it seems like, for the foreseeable future, they're just going to follow the leader as far as what Nvidia does, and offer it at a more affordable price point for a different demographic, which isn't a bad marketing strategy. It's just like, if you don't like the overall idea of AI being brought to gaming and that being the focus on how we play games, you're kind of out of luck. That's the future, unfortunately. So I said, if you're not really into that, then there's plenty of graphics cards that are available that are in your price point that are going to give you the performance you need to play the games how you want to play them, no matter what. That's, we already have that. Unfortunately, at least for the next couple of weeks to maybe months, the used market is absolutely screwed up because of this launch. I should have expected it. I didn't feel like it was necessary to mention that because I thought it would be common sense, but seeing as how surprised people are at the launch of these graphics cards, it needs to be addressed. I never said in that video, even though I will eventually get a 5090, that I was going to buy one at launch. I knew that they would be, overpriced. I wasn't going to take the time. It was a work day, first and foremost. I wasn't going to take time off to go to a store. I think that's dumb. I wasn't going to spend a bunch of time refreshing tabs just to spend $2,000 on a graphics card. I think that's dumb. If I can't just readily, like, easily see one available, put it in the cart, and then buy it when I feel comfortable about buying it, then I'm just not going to purchase it. That's how I approach every single thing when it comes to this hobby. At the end of the day, guys, it's a hobby. I'm not going to take that kind of time to spend that kind of money for a hobby like this. Maybe if it was like a more important event rather than just buying a graphics card, I'm into cars. Maybe if I was going to like some sort of like a car show or like race or something like that, I would take time to do that. But for just buying a GPU, no, that's it's dumb to me. I find it fascinating how many people are willing to camp outside these micro centers in the freezing cold every single time a graphics card launches. More so Nvidia than AMD, because they're like the front runners and I guess what the people want, the luxury brand. By the way, I made a video probably 3 to 4 years ago saying exactly that Nvidia was going to lower the amount of quantity that they give graphics cards and make themselves a perceived luxury brand for electronics, which might seem stupid, but we're literally in that right now with the way people are just rabid at the bit to get these graphics cards. To be honest with you, I don't really use Apple as an example for anything, but if there's any sort of perceived luxury brand that launches their new products right, I think Apple is probably one of the better options or companies to look at. They announce a new iPhone, they announce a new iPad, laptop, whatever it might be. And within the next couple of weeks, you can easily just go to your local Apple store or go online and purchase it. You'll have support for it. It'll be in stock and you can comfortably buy it. And when you have a company that regularly does that, it doesn't, give you the perception of a lack of availability. Which, what does that mean? It means that the used market for Apple products are really, really good. Now, I personally don't use a laptop on a regular basis outside of, my work laptop. It's mainly just like my phone, my tablet, and then my desktops if I need to do something a little bit more important. But, part of me would like to get a laptop. There are certain, situations where I don't want to be on the couch using my computer. I don't want to be sitting at my desk, but I want something bigger than my phone and my tablet. So a laptop would be nice in some of those situations, especially like when traveling. You want something a little bit more horsepower. But again, looking at laptop prices for like what I need and what we use it for normally, and what I actually more prioritize, like screen, build quality, battery life, like the used market for like M1, M2 MacBooks, MacBook Airs, MacBook Pros is absolutely ridiculous for the amount of just horsepower that you get on a regular basis. Mac Minis, M1 Mac Minis, M2 Mac Minis, or whichever ones. I haven't not really caught up on exactly which product SKUs are available right now on the used market for Apple because I haven't like really refreshed my mind on it. But last time I checked, like you get a really good bang for your buck for a lot of those Apple products because Apple just gives you really good, processing efficiency with their Apple Silicon, and they flood the market. There's no sort of perceived lack thereof of availability. Here in the United States, the majority of people are iPhone users or Apple users, so I think a lot of infrastructure would kind of fall apart if people weren't able to get their new iPhones. To the point at which people are reluctant to upgrade their iPhones. They keep their same iPhone till it breaks, and when it does break, they have a relatively available upgrade path that they can go to that just makes sense. That's usually how I take it with the graphics cards, but we got to the point that that's not necessarily something that can be done. I'm just going to share my screen really quick and show you some of the current eBay listings of graphics cards down the stack that I did mention in my last video, saying that you would be able to get them for a much better price after the 50 series launch. Now, I should have prefaced in that video, it wouldn't be right after because, I didn't expect them to flood the market. I did perceive there would be pretty much a lot of like stockouts available or lack of availability, excuse me. But later this year, I would say around like the August, September time period, once people who those like rabid individuals that just really want these 59s and 5080s have them, and the stock starts piling back up, and there's less and less people that are willing to flush out push out that kind of cash for a 5090, like $2,000 plus. The market will start to slowly but surely reset itself, but right now, not so much. So you can see here, I got listings for 40 RTX 4090s. You can't even find them. You see these prices. These are not for 4090s. We're still scrolling. Haven't even come across the first one. This one sold for 1700. I'm sure this is a scammer. No reviews. Not even worth clicking on that one. This is probably the first listing that actually is probably legit for $2,500, more than the MSRP for what this card went for. You could pretty much readily available if on Asus Tough, maybe like this time last year, a little bit earlier last year in a Micro Center or even on like eBay for around $1,700 to $1,800, but $2,500. No, it's just with these launches, it just screws up everything. But everything listed before that just isn't the graphics cards, which shows you they're not even like selling them, which is crazy to see. You go to 4080s, these should be $1,000. 4080s literally a couple weeks ago were going for no more than $1,200 for like super high end models. 4080s I was seeing like on the used market for anywhere from like I was seeing them like in the low 700s, especially like on if you're doing the auction. Now, buy it now options usually were a little bit more expensive. Some of the parts recyclers were charging closer to that $1,000 mark, but I saw buy it now options for 4080s, 4080 Supers for right at that $1,000 price point. And now you can see a good $200 plus over that original listing. RTX 4070s, this is probably the biggest offender. I mean, $900. I actually bought a 4070 Super for pretty close to MSRP. It was a founder's edition, so I got it for like I think $600 something dollars, and then you have to add on the tax and the shipping. So I think I made out for just a little over $650, everything said and done. But I probably could have got it cheaper if the guy didn't bid me up like crazy to my max bid at the very last second. But is what it is when you're going for auctions. But now I'm glad I did that because man, these prices are absolutely ridiculous for 4070s, 4070 Ti's being sold, and these are a lot of like used components as well. You have to go down to like the 3070 really for things to kind of see them like they've reset themselves. 3080 saw a markup of about 50 to $60 compared to what they usually were selling for. They were creeping on that low 400s, some of them selling in the low 300s. Again, I bought mine for around like $350 around this time last year, actually, maybe like around April of 2023. But now like those prices are nowhere to be found on a 3080 10 gigabyte model, which is crazy. Now once you get down to the 3070, I mean, some of these prices really haven't gone up that much. selling for around the $300, which is where they've been selling before. Maybe in some cases, $30 to $25 more expensive compared to last time I checked these prices for these graphics cards. But it pretty much put everything, like everything that's already 70 and below, as far as performance goes, is kind of frozen at where it was selling used. The 3080 and up seems to have trended upward up the scale. Even 3070 Ti's, which are going for like $400, which is crazy. They were kind of, I saw 3070 Ti's going for like this price point, 335, 350, maybe 360 a couple weeks ago. But yeah, guys, it's absolutely crazy that this is the situation we're in right now. So the big question is, how do we fix this? Well, for one, I think the only realistic way we can fix this is for Nvidia to, begin to maintain some level of stock for their highest end graphics cards. That's literally the only way that I can realistically see this actually fixing itself and resetting the used market. Because the other two solutions, I don't really have that much faith in. The other one would be AMD kind of slotting in a very high performing graphics card for a ridiculously low price. I know a lot of people get hyped for this every single year. It could be different this time. Maybe they'll get it right for the, let's see, 6700 XT, no, 5700 XT, 60, 70. So I guess the fourth time, maybe fifth, sixth time's the charm if you count all the other previous generations before RDNA even was a thing. But yeah, if AMD can come out with their 9070 or 9070 XT and slot that graphics card in at no more than like $600, literally no more than $600 for that graphics card, and not just try to undersell the 5080 by $50, which is probably what they will do, and offer a software stack that is just as good for like literally 60% or lower of the price of its competitor. That's literally the only way that it's going to reset the market. And even if it does, from a gaming standpoint, I'm not necessarily sure it's going to bring down the prices of 5080s and 4090s and 58 and 5090s because of their AI and enterprise use cases. That is a whole other animal. If these AMD graphics cards can't compete on that front, then there's no, use case for these people that are using this for AI workloads or, server farms or enterprise use cases or engineering applications to actually invest in an AMD graphics card if it doesn't work for their workload. So that probably will still keep the higher end cards pretty high, but for the cards that I guess most people would need, maybe not necessarily want, but need to for their gaming experiences, I think it could reset that. But again, that is left on the table. And I'm not going to hop on that hype train. The other one would be for just the us gamers, people that are selling their used components, to be willing to cut a deal on used components. I'll die on this hill that electronics don't hold their value. Now, that might be different for certain graphics cards, but I mean, seeing how graphics cards age, like they'll hold their value up to a certain point, but then once something new comes out, like it's like maybe 2 or 3 generations later, they'll literally drop like a rock, sinking in water as far as like what they're actually selling on the used market. We saw that was this with the 2080 Ti. No one's buying 2080 Ti's for more than $350, regardless of what condition it's in, and that happened like over the course of a couple months when the 40 series launched. And then you look at like the Titan XP. That I literally remember looking at the used market for the Titan XP from like $500 to $400 to $300 to now like $200, $250 over the course of like maybe like a year from like 2022 to 2023 time period. So again, this is just something that will happen with electronics once their perceived value is no longer there because they're like, I don't know, 2 or 3 generations old. They drop instantly back into line where they should be. You wouldn't believe how many times I just have like old components sitting around that I would just give to my friends for free because I didn't, I guess I could have sold it, but I just didn't take the time. I know they'd use it. I knew they would be going to a good, in good hands and being used for a good cause. I wanted him to play video games with us, so I gave it to my friend. I've done like complete system dropouts, like motherboard, CPU, RAM, SSD, even for like $150 on an old like DDR3 system, where the DDR3 kit could have sold for $150 itself. Graphics cards, when I get rid of my 3060 Ti that I'm no longer going to be using, I'll probably sell it for like $150, $200, just to sell it quickly. Yeah, I probably could get a little bit more money out of that graphics card, but again, offering deals to people, that's what's going to encourage people in this used market to actually use it. But now you have people, because they see the scalpers, making a bunch of money. They see Nvidia making a bunch of money. They see the retailers making a bunch of money. They're like, why can't I make a bunch of money on my used graphics card too? If they're truly, if that's what people are willing to pay for, why shouldn't I scalp other people as well? Which is why you have people who still think 3090s and 3090 Ti's are $1,000 graphics cards, which makes no sense to me. This is why I won't be using like place. I don't like using retail shops like Java or whatever. It's literally just a communal place for overzealous gamers to sell their graphics cards at inflated prices and feel justified in doing so. But regardless, that's neither here nor that's a completely another story. But yeah, we should be willing to sell our parts for a loss, and that might not be in line with what's going on at the very top end. But again, that's not reality. That's just, I don't know. I guess it's reality because it's what's happening right now, but it's not the reality of what it should be, if that makes sense. So honestly, my biggest recommendation: hold off on buying graphics cards. And guys, don't forget the plot of why we're even in this hobby. The point of this is to play video games and enjoy our computers for our personal computing needs. Whenever you're building a computer, look at your use cases, look at what you currently have, and ask yourself, what is the best way I can go about solving this situation? You wouldn't imagine how many times, like even when making these videos, I was looking at getting a new microphone set up, a new camera set up, and all I really had to do was just take a little bit more time to look at different software options that would best optimize how I make these videos. For example, the camera that I had autofocuses. I had to just look up, take the time. I guess this is lazy on my part, but how do I basically manually have this thing focused to where it's not like going in and out? How do I work on noise canceling options for when I record videos? How can I better record better quality videos? That kind of stuff. And that's going to, I could have spent way more money to get newer, perceived better components and hardware versus what I already have. But for this foreseeable future, I've optimized my workflow. As far as how I record videos, I was looking at, getting way bigger storage, which I will eventually, but I've been able to push that off for another year or so because I changed the video export settings that I have that will actually reduce the overall space that my exported videos take up. Using different format files and compressing different things, this, that, and the other, that saves space. So that saves money. It goes back to playing video games as well. I'm gonna tell you right now, if you're still on a 1080p screen, you do not need anything more than a 3070 Ti as far as like just raw GPU horsepower. I understand if you want to turn on ray tracing and all that kind of stuff. I don't particularly think it's worthwhile using that at a 1080p resolution. But it's just it's give and take there. But 1080p, if you're on a 1080p screen, a 16 by 9 1080p screen, even like the ultra wide ones, first off, ultra wide pixel density would be terrible on a 1080p screen nowadays to today's standards. But a 3070 Ti would handle any sort of game at high settings at 1080p, no problem whatsoever. So from that standpoint, you really don't need to worry about spending more than $450 on a graphics card. Let's just say 3080 so you can get that 10 gigabytes of VRAM that some people would say is a minimum to play games at 1080p. 1440p though has become the new like enthusiast standard, I suppose. Eventually, 1080p will be phased out. I personally don't think it will be like as fast as people perceive, because while 1440p is a big jump above 1080p as far as video quality, with the size screens that most people are buying, anywhere from the 21 to the 27-inch monitor size, a 1080p screen still puts out a usable picture quality. It doesn't really look that pixelated. Yeah, certain things on the screen aren't super crisp, but when you're just using it for a normal use case, it's perfectly fine. And the aspect ratio is fine to where it gives you a modern computing experience. Before 1080p was a thing, using 4x3 monitors and 720p and these 480p, other weird resolutions, that was an archaic way of computing. 1080p screens still to this day is a modern way of using a computer. But with 1440p, even anything above a 4080 Super, you don't need. And a 4080 Super will at some point drop back down to $1,000. And that's really if you just want to like crank setting. I'm talking about like everything turned on, you're using ray tracing, everything's maxed out. You're not even like taking the time to optimize your games to run properly. You're just basically running games based on how benchmarkers run games to do testing, which is not the most optimal way to play games. So there is that. Honestly, some of these reviewers need to take the time to like say benchmarking versus optimized settings and show you the FPS difference that you'll have that versus like the visual quality. Now, obviously they do benchmarking as a standard to show relative performance, but at the same time, people need to be reminded that benchmarks don't represent reality. It just is a way to perceive in a scientific fashion the difference in performance of different graphics cards. But a 4080 Super, 4070 Ti, even, you know, you're if you're willing to tune a couple settings, turn the shadows just down a little bit, turn it from ultra high crazy just down to medium, and you're getting a bunch of FPS back. You will be fine on that graphics card. A 4070 Ti Super, which was going for like $700 a couple weeks ago, not anymore, unfortunately, but you know, $700, you know, that's plenty to get a high-end gaming experience. The really only reason you should be looking at going to a, you know, 5080, 5090, 4090 sort of class of graphics card and whatever next high-end AMD graphics card that they release. The only reason to do that is if you're gaming at 4K and like a super high refresh rate 4K screen. 4K 120 probably could still get away with a 4080, 4070 Ti sort of experience. 4K 60 probably could drop that under like a 4070 Super sort of graphics card to get that experience. We're talking like 240 hertz refresh rate 4K monitors, which you're spending like $800 to $1,000 on a, you know, pretty decent monitor, OLED monitor, something like that. Now I've looked at those monitors; they look amazing, right? They look amazing. Am I willing to spend that kind of money on a monitor? No. I personally have my monitors that I will be upgrading to. I'm looking at a couple like an ultra wide 1440p display monitor for like my gaming setup or workstation, you know, desk setup. And above that, I want to get like a 43-inch like 4K TV. That way, I'll be able to like sit on my bed behind me and be able to watch TV from my desk, not have to go to my living room all the time. So that's my personal setup. And still, I guess if you're going for like super ultra wide 4K or 1440p displays, you're still pushing pixel counts that's similar to that of a 4K high refresh rate monitor. Um, so there can be a use case for those graphics cards, but even still, you can get high refresh rate 4K monitors with 4070 Ti's, 4070s, and just tune settings, and you're going to be fine, guys. You're going to be fine. The games people are actually going to be playing on a regular basis, you know, that's another thing you have to consider. Not everyone's going to be playing Cyberpunk 2077 fully path traced for every single time they turn on their computer, right? So we just need to keep things in perspective. And when you do that, you don't end up wasting money. You know, you don't end up putting a down payment on a car for a gaming experience that, again, you're really not going to be able to take advantage of in your normal use cases. So again, guys, you know, gamers have forgotten the plot. They lost the plot for maybe just a short time. Hopefully we'll kind of gain our senses back, but just be aware, this is the new standard. You know, if Nvidia is just going to be pushing and other companies are going to be pushing this AI workloads being implemented into video games, which again, I'm fully confident in their abilities to give us a good gaming experience. But with that being said, it's a way bigger market now. Graphics cards are now general processing units versus graphics processing units. And with that, with it being more general, it's going to have a more general audience, which means you have more players in the game, some cases with more money that's willing to spend it and inflate the prices. So yeah, just don't, you know, just wait. Don't get discouraged by it. Get in the ebbs and flows of the used market. Get used to buying used cards. Like it's really becoming to the point to where buying used graphics cards needs to become like a more of an accepted standard, like it would be, you know, buying a used car. You might think it's kind of strange, but with how graphics cards are built nowadays, and if you can get a good quality one, you'll still have a perfectly good time with a used GPU. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this video. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.